and CEO of Black Enterprise, Earl Butch Graves, Jr.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Did you guys enjoy last night's XCEL Awards? It was truly a beautiful, beautiful event. It's my great pleasure to again welcome you to our 6th annual Black Men Excel Summit hosted by FedEx. Black Men Excel is all about celebrating our excellence and leadership as Black men in corporate America, business, and beyond. Last night, we kicked off the summit with the emphasis on excellence and the presentation of our XCEL Awards. Let's give another round of applause to our 2022 honorees, Ray Robinson, Arnold Donald, Grant Hill, Ben Crump, and Coach McDonald. Starting this morning and for the duration of the summit, we will maintain the focus on excellence while immersing ourselves in all things key to enhancing our capacity for leadership in our corporations, businesses, and beyond. We've prepared a very rich agenda for you, with sessions on topics ranging from navigating corporate America's evolving DE&I landscape and gaining corporate board seats to winning as leaders of diverse teams and competing successfully for C-suite positions. From executive coaching to fireside chats, we've assembled the best and the brightest to share strategies, insights, and resources with one objective in mind: to invest in your success as Black men in leadership. That begins right now with an exclusive fireside chat conversations with 2 of our XCEL Award honorees. First, with our champion for justice, attorney Ben Crump, and followed by Group M North America CEO Kirk McDonald, who will sit with Black Enterprise Executive Vice President and Chief Content Officer Derek Dingle. Front and center, gentlemen, it's time to listen up and level up. We begin with the man we've come to rely on as Black America's Attorney General. Last evening, we presented a modest glimpse of the famed civil rights and trial attorney. This morning, we are privileged to engage in an intimate conversation with one of the most fascinating people of our times, including discussing the latest case on the docket, holding corporate America accountable for keeping pledges to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and end systemic inequality. He is a force with a soothing solemnity that has been lauded by the National Newspapers Publishers Association as Newsmaker of the Year, the National Trial Lawyers as one of the top 100 lawyers, Ebony Magazine's Power 100 Most Influential African Americans, Time Magazine's 100 Most Fascinating People, and as a triumphant champion by Black Enterprise as a Black Men Excel. Please join me in welcoming attorney and Black Enterprise Black Men XCEL Award honoree Benjamin Crump, joined by, of course, our award-winning broadcaster, Mr. Ed Gordon.
Thanks, Butch. Just a couple of housekeeping notes here. We will be taking questions from the audience. You can see the middle aisle has 2 microphone stands. I think we'll probably only use the one. I would ask that you keep your questions brief and 2 questions, and by that I mean not TWO, but keep them to questions and not a soliloquy, as Genevieve said earlier today. It'll be my job to cut you short if you move to that. And since y'all ain't buying me lunch, it don't matter. All right. Ben, you made some news yesterday with the announcement of a class action suit against the United States government on behalf of Black farmers and those who are underserved, based on the repeal of a section with the American Rescue Plan. Give us a sense of where you stand. I know it's something that you didn't necessarily want to do, but you feel the need to do it based on this repeal.
It was announced yesterday and made some news that we filed a class action lawsuit, Ed Gordon, against the federal government for breaking its promise to Black farmers and other disadvantaged farmers of color you all may remember there was a big celebration in the Rose Garden during the American Rescue Plan Act, where they said they were going to give $5 billion to black farmers for relief for all the discrimination and the fact that the Trump administration in 4 years had given out $16 billion to farmers with less than 1% of that going to black farmers. It's more in like 0.1, if you know what I mean. And so the Democrats said they were going to address this, and it's crazy to me, Ed, that when you try to make up for the discrimination, the historic discrimination, then all the white farmers and the powers that be, they went and filed lawsuits saying reverse discrimination. And what infuriates me so much is people want black voters in the black community to always fight for them, always stand up for them, always be loyal to them. But when it's something for our benefit, they cave so easily, they fold. And so they repealed it. And then they came up and they put in the Inflation Reduction Act. They said, we're gonna put aside this money where we're gonna let you modify your loans and restructure your loans. So you're saying, hold on, and these are farmers. These aren't people as smart as Ed Gordon. You know, I ain't smart as Ed Gordon, but we just basic people. And you said, I went from getting 100% of my farm paid off, and you were gonna give me 20% to deal with the taxes, to now, you're telling me I owe thousands of dollars in debt, and you told me don't worry about paying when you told me you were gonna give me this money. So for the last year during the coronavirus, I didn't pay. You bailing everybody else out, but I didn't pay. And then they said, and you got these new penalties and interest from a loan modification. And the farmers are saying, well, this math don't add up. I mean, call me, you know, crazy, but even a fool can see you welched on your deal. It's like 40 acres and a mule all over again. You promised us that you were gonna make right for everything we sacrificed, and then you changed it out on us. And so now people are all upset saying, well, this is an inconvenient time, Ben. Why y'all doing this now? We so close. But to the midterms, and I'm saying, y'all do understand the USDA is foreclosing on black farmers. Is it not inconvenient for them? And what we supposed to wait till after the midterm when we ain't got no leverage at all and then think you're gonna do right by us? So I'm just saying.
We should note, and I don't expect you to name any names, but when you say they, we are talking about the people that we would normally see as allies in the fight. I'm talking about particular organizations. I'm talking about particular politicians. We don't have to name anyone, but it is not just a nebulous they.
You know, Ed, we often talk, and I know Butch Graves and I often talk, yeah, at some point we have to stand on our principles. You know, it's always easy to go along and get along, but at some point, we got to stand up for those people who believe in us, who sacrifice so much for us to get this influence. And I think about what Harry Belafonte said, what good is having influence if you don't use it when it matters most? What good would it have been if Earl Graves, when he was talking to all those corporate CEOs and executives, that he didn't try to speak up for black and brown people to be able to sit at the table, to open the door. And so, you know, Ed, I just say to all our allies who are waffling on us and saying, well, you know, we can just sweep the black farmers under the rug and that kind of stuff. At some point, I pray that they would take an oath to be unapologetic defenders for black life, black liberty, and black humanity. Because if our most talented, our most gifted, our most educated won't do it, then who will?
And Ben, let's be clear, over the last, I'd say at least 25 years, if not more, when you look at the welfare that has been given to corporate farming over the years, when you juxtapose it, this really does scream of hypocrisy.
It's so hypocritical. I'll say this and then I'll shut up, Counsel. I know you got a lot of other questions. Y'all know there was a letter written by the American bankers saying don't do this deal because we'll make less profit. Not that they won't make profit, that we'll make less profit. And so I'm sitting here with the farmers, we're saying, hold on, when the bankers were having a rough time, the federal government gave them the largest bailout in American history. And now when black farmers, like everybody else during the coronavirus, are having a rough time, you say, oh no, don't bail them out because it'll be bad for our business. All we're saying is, where's the fairness and justice for black people? You know, we're not begrudging the black farmers, the white farmers filing these reverse discrimination claims when the John Boyd, the president of black farmers, said, you know, I don't really understand why the white farmers would do that because this would be good for everybody. Helping black farmers, helping white farmers is good for everybody. But they didn't see it like that. They just said, no, we don't want them to be able to have equality. We don't want them to be able to give generational wealth to their children. We just want you all to keep looking out for us. We don't really care about them. They're insignificant. And until we take a stand to all say that none of us are insignificant and we're all in this together, if they can say the black farmers are insignificant, they can say black executives are insignificant.
And we should note, Ben, in America, when we talk farmers, it conjures up this mind's eye picture of a guy in overalls and a straw hat and, on a tractor, but that is not farming in America. American farming really is corporate farming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, let me move to get you to talk about something else that you and I have been working together on, and you've been on the ground in Flint. But when we see Jackson, Mississippi, the water situation there, the environmental racism that we've been talking about for decades, and it's not Jackson, Mississippi, and Flint that are the only areas in America that are having this kind of crisis. Yeah. Give me a sense of where we are and what you'd like to do from that point.
You know, we had this historic settlement in Flint with the state of Michigan, but the Environmental Protection Agency, who are the watchdogs, were complicit. And you know it better, Ed, than most of us, because you're right there in Detroit. Everybody watched them switch the water supply to the Flint River. It wasn't a secret. It was written about in newspapers and everything. And the federal government kept saying, no, the water is safe. And all these scientists are saying, no, this water is bad. This water is contaminated and filled with lead. And what it does, it stunts the brain development of young children. This large majority minority city of Flint, Michigan, i.e. black and brown people, they said it's okay to save less than a quarter a gallon of water, some ridiculous amount of money, de minimis, that they were going to save from changing from Lake Huron or whatever to the Flint River. And they did it. And the EPA, we went out and we delivered for the party in power, the House, the Senate, and the White House. And you would think that the first thing they would do is say, let's really look at Flint, Michigan. Let's look at Jackson, Mississippi, these enclaves of African Americans who are just so loyal to us and we can always count on them. Let's look at giving back to them. But they didn't do that. And I give a lot of credit to President Obama's administration in this sense. His EPA got sued a record 42 times for trying, went up to the US Supreme Court for trying to say, we can't make it legal to build toxic pollutant chemical plants in black and brown neighborhoods. Now, it's not legal in white neighborhoods. They won't stand for it. But they say they can just always come to our community and build these factories that everybody know is going to pollute the groundwater and it's going to affect our health. That's why you got people in Tampa, Florida, the Gopher plant. Everybody got cancer, and people trying to figure out, well, how do everybody get cancer? Well, it's the battery smelting plant that they put behind the black elementary school. And so it's that type of stuff. When we say environmental racism, they have made it legal, intellectual, legal justification to, and I hate to be so drastic, but I don't know how else to say it, Ed. I call it legalized genocide. When you are going to let these companies come in our communities and do it, and you know it's going to shorten our lifespan, what else can we call it?
So Ben, how do we change this dynamic? I think about the cancer clusters that we've seen for decades, right? And it's not by happenstance that they're always in black and brown communities. They're never found in rich communities. I think I called you the week that the White House had the American Rescue Plan, and as you said, there was all this celebration. I saw all of these black faces at the White House jumping around, yet there were concerns about a number of things, particularly the things that you're on the forefront, and they were looking to the administration to do more. Yet when that celebration, and it's heady to get an invitation to the White House, but we have been bought and sold too many times. How do we convince ourselves that it's time to change that game plan, change that dynamic? If we don't, we're going to continue to see what we've seen over and over again.
You know, I think it starts with each one of us, Ed, and we all have to have this conversation because we've been blessed. We the talented 10th that W.B. Du Bois talked about. And he said, you know, 10% of us are gonna be just fine. We gonna have good lives, our children gonna be well educated, we gonna have the best medical care, everything. But 90% of our people are gonna struggle. And if we don't fight to help them, then they won't be saved. So we all have to take a commitment. And I'm not asking everybody to come out on the front line with Reverend Al and Black Lives Matter and all these young activists, but you gotta say, I'm gonna do something. I don't care what it is, whether it's I'm gonna help mentor the next generation of young black executives. I'm gonna commit to their success. I'm gonna be intentional about making sure I give scholarship money. I'm gonna be intentional about making my church deal with underserved issues in my community that I live in. When I see a black boy get shot in the back, I ain't gonna turn my head. I'm gonna write a letter to my mayor because I know my corporation has a lot of influence and say, you know, can the police respond to our community about why they use a disproportionate of excessive force on black and brown people. And the last thing I'll say is this, Ed, because when you get a chance to speak truth to power, and Butch Graves and I, we have these long conversations, and he doesn't bite his tongue, I don't bite my tongue, because I think we have to be real with each other and so forth. Reverend Al says something I think is profound. He says, one of the hardest things to do is to preach the eulogy of an insignificant Negro who could have made a difference for our people, but chose to play it safe. Let that sink in, y'all.
Let me now say that I'd ask some of you who may have questions or that do have questions to make your way to the microphone. I would stop at about 5 and then you can add on or you'll be standing there for a long time. And please remember, we're gonna ask you to tell us who you are and where you're from. And again, we'd ask that you keep the questions brief.
And can I say this right quick? Y'all remember, some people think they're gonna say I'm controversial or when you speak up for our people and our culture, and they might. But what I have found is they have so much respect for you. When you go and say, well, what about what's happening with George Floyd? Let's talk about that as corporation, and let's use this opportunity to see if we can move the argument forward on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You'll be surprised at how much respect our white brothers and sisters will give you when they say, oh no, he is very conscious about his community and his culture.
How do you take on the criticism? How do you deal with that, Ben? I remember talking to Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson about being in the fore and the front, and I remember Reverend Sharpton saying to me, when people say, well, you're always there, you're always running here and running there, and he says, well, when I get there, I never have to get in line. So I'm curious how you take on that criticism.
My personal hero is Thurgood Marshall, as you know. And I just think if you look at history, and my mama and grandmama used to always say this, baby, they talked about the child of God. You think they ain't gonna talk about you? It can't be about a popularity contest, because if that's what it's about, you might as well say, I'm never gonna make a difference. I'm never gonna make a change. You want your life to mean something at the end. And I think, as I talk about in the documentary, I say a line that God has blessed me with influence. For whatever reason, God has blessed each of us with influence. Shame on us if we don't use it to try to help somebody. I mean, shame on us if you go to bed and the only person you help was yourself. So that's how I deal with the criticism. I say, I can't win over everybody. The height of arrogance is to think everybody's going to love you. And then I say to myself, I got enough friends. Ed like me, Butch like me. I'm okay. I ain't got to have everybody be my friend.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is William, and I am the chairman of Black Men Network here in Maryland. One of the things that we've come across in dealing with different organizations is that people say that things like you described are happening in the black and brown communities because they know that black and brown people won't do anything about it, right? One of the things that we've been doing in our organization is gathering strong, intelligent black men to be able to not only make a better representation, but to show our people how to make an effective change that's life-lasting. What would you say is your, what recommendation would you give to someone like me that wants to do something, make a change, and lead people to get more people to make more of an effective change, especially when they look like me?
What I would say is try to get as many young people as you can around you, right, and start influencing them, because once their mind is stretched with a new idea, it would never gain its former dimensions. Vladimir Lenin, the Russian communist, said, if you give me your children just for 4 years to educate, I will plant a seed in their mind that will never be unrooted. I mean, you have to understand, it's about the future always in young people and impacting them. That's why I thought what Earl Graves were doing was so important with Black Enterprise, because it was impacting young black people to say, we can be the top of corporations, we can have critical mass. Ben Franklin said, democracy is like two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know how that vote is going to go. But he said liberty. He said liberty is making sure that that lamb is well armed to protest that vote. So if you want to make a difference in the world, we got to make sure that young lambs of color are well armed, right, to protest that vote, not with guns and bullets and means of violence, but with intellect, with strategic diplomacy. You know, it's a game of chess, not checkers. And I'll say this and then I'll let you go. But it's about young people. What I really think the key is to this, when you get rid of all of it, what Ed was talking about the politics, everything, what the key out is we have to make sure that our children are more intelligent than those who will seek to oppress them. That's how we win this war.
Absolutely.
Thank you, William.
All right, thank you.
How's it going? My name is Deontay Thompson. I'm a senior director at Dell Technologies. I think one of the most impactful experiences that I've had as a black man was a few years ago. I attended a Black Man XCEL conference, and they talked a lot about mental health. And I had never been in this space amongst brothers where we just openly talk about the importance of counseling and mental health. I mean, we are literally sitting around a pool talking about it. And then that was right before 2020 happened, and I think a lot of the leaders in this room, like myself, were in a position where they were right in the middle of the corporate transformation, and with transformation comes that resistance from everywhere. And so trying to figure out, like, how do you stay grounded? How do you keep your mind right? And I think about a lot of the work that you're doing, like you're getting resistance 360 pretty much. How do you keep your mental health like in check? How do you stay grounded in order to continue to do the work that you do when you know you're going to get a lot of resistance and a lot of pushback?
No, that's an excellent question, and I'm very happy, Ed, that we are starting to talk about mental health more in our community, and we have to continue to do that because it's so real, y'all. It's so real that I listen sometimes to Mike Eric Dyson and some others that we talk about what America has done to black people in the black community, and it really do make you want to holler. I mean, the microaggressions that you deal with every day. Oh, you could be the most successful African American in corporate America anywhere. You go out there in your black suit and stand and wait for your car. And everybody come up to you. Or you stand in the airport. They just assume that we are supposed to be a servant figure there for their convenience. And so what I think when we talk about mental health is you can't take it for granted. And I have to work on that within myself. Thurgood Marshall, I keep going back to him, and I try to compartmentalize so much. Justice Marshall said, when he was the NAACP lawyer, just going around the country, and I mean, Thurgood was so great for so many reasons. When he would go to a city, all the black people would be happy, saying, oh, Thurgood's coming. But then the KKK and the white supremacists knew he was coming too. And they'll be prepared for the high yellow Negro from New York. And I mean, he literally would have to move from house to house every night because they didn't doubt. They knew the lynch mob was coming to get him. But he said he would always just try to focus on the task of fighting injustice, not for just that family, but what it would have on the greater society, because he knew if he lost focus, it would mean greater injustices. And so that's what I find myself doing a lot, and people like Ed and them check on me, because when you with Breonna Taylor's mother and her family, you trying to keep it together and help them be able to keep their head, because you trying to help them make sense out of something that makes no sense at all. But if you are, as the attorney and the counselor are trying to keep some ground, some foundation for people to not just lose it, then you got to keep it together. But you can't think it's not going to have a mental impact on you too, seeing such death and grief and tragedy. I leave here in a matter of hours, and I was telling Ed, my schedule has changed. And y'all may have seen on the news this terrible case where this 17-year-old Hispanic kid was eating a hamburger in the McDonald's parking lot, and the officer shot him 10 times. Well, he's on life support, and the Hispanic family reached out, and I was trying to wait till Saturday, but they said, well, can you come today? We think Saturday may be too late, because they wanted me to try to get there before they had to pull the plug. So Cliff, my associate, and Denise, we went trying to change the schedule. But I just tried to start preparing my mind now for this mother and father who not only have to deal with the police brutality, but they also got to deal with the decision to pull the plug. And you can't even imagine how hard that decision is for a parent to say that the doctors and them are telling me to give up. And I'm giving up not just on my child, but our children are our future. So every time you talk about a child being killed, and many of you have children, that's your future, man. And what mental impact is that gonna have on you forever? I mean, having to pull the plug, it's almost as if you wish somebody else could make the decision for you. So I say all that to say, I now do a telemedicine. I'll find time to talk to one of my fraternity brothers who is a mental health counselor, David Marion, and we at least talk about, you know, hey man, how you feel about that? Because I would never do that, but now I'm getting to the point where we just need to talk about it. How did that make you feel?
Let me say this, thank you very much. Before we get to the next question, I think what you said about microaggressions is important. I also think that we have to start looking at the microaggressions that we do within our community. Too often we look at white folk treating us a certain way, but we need to look, because that's the easiest to control. And we're not doing enough of that, I think. Before I get to the next question, let me ask you, you mentioned that young man in San Antonio, 17 years old, literally eating a McDonald's cheeseburger as he was shot. Most recently in Detroit, 5 officers, 38 shots, a 22-year-old who had a knife, had a history of mental illness, but there was absolutely no need to shoot him 38 times. Now the police are saying that, and there's a black police chief in Detroit by all accounts. He's just taken over for James Craig, who was also an African American. By all accounts, they are saying that he made his way toward the officer. But if you've got 5 officers, the kid has a knife, and you have all that you have, you ought to be able to control that situation. It doesn't seem he was close enough to lunge and hurt anyone. How do we keep dealing with these situations, Ben? It's gotta be difficult. It's difficult on us. It's gotta be difficult on you that each day we're seeing another and another and another. Is there anything more that we can do to help stem the tide?
Yes, there is. Yeah, I know it sounds cliche, and we have so many competing interests, but elections matter. And I gotta tell you, they don't shoot white people with knives coming at them. It's rare. Because the courts, you know, American justice system has told them without shouting at air that white life is more important than any other life. You just look at the statistics on death row. The easiest way to get on death row in America is to be a person of color and to kill a white person, or to be accused of killing a white person, because the Innocence Project say, you know, there's over 100,000 people, mostly black men, on death row accused of killing a white person, and there's no evidence at all. Most of them innocent. But when you look at it in reverse, and a white person kill a black person or a person of color, there's not even a chance they're gonna be arrested if they can come up with some subjective version of saying, oh, I thought my life was in danger. I felt a threat. So if a black person has anything in their hand, it don't have to be a knife. It can be a shoe or a bottle, anything at all. And they can be running away because, you know, most of the cases I take, and Cliff would tell you, we have learned that if it's a close call, man, they always gonna go in favor of the police. So we find cases that it's hard to dispute. Like you running away and you get shot in your back, or Pamela Turner, man, I'm heartbroken. There has never been a police officer convicted by a jury in the United States of America of a felony conviction for killing a black woman. Never. Pamela Turner, look at that video. She was on her back saying, I'm pregnant. This police officer on his feet shot at her 5 times, hitting her in her face, her chest, and her stomach. And a jury with 3 blacks in Houston, Texas this week came back and said the police were justified. I mean, 400 times in the last 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, the Washington Post documents the police killed or black women died in police custody. Only 8 officers were charged. 4 of them, cases were dismissed. 4 of them pled to misdemeanors. I mean, Breonna Taylor is so symbolic of the injustice that black women face. Malcolm X often talked about that, you know, the most disrespected, the most neglected, the most unprotected person in America is the black woman. Brothers, we gotta do something about that. We really gotta be aggressive. And so you ask, just to answer your question real quick, the Supreme Court has said qualified immunity almost on anything. If a police officer just says, I felt in fear of my life. And Stand Your Ground said any white person say, I feel in fear anytime Dick and Harry can kill us. But you know, judges have so much discretion. What this is about, it's a fight in Houston and Dallas and Atlanta. But they're electing black judges left and right in the cities. And that judge will control what evidence goes into that court. We saw it in Houston. We had a white judge who hated black people. It was evident. I mean, he didn't let the fact that Pam Turner had mental illness, he didn't let the fact that the guy had tased her and never should have tased her, and she did like anybody else, struggled with the taser. They went to the ground. She had the taser in her hand. It was not being able to be deployed again. He didn't let any of that come in.
And we have to take a note out of the playbook of conservatives who spent decades to get rid of Roe versus Wade. They stayed the course, they put those numbers in place, and it's gone now. We've got about 10 minutes left.
That's why you're brilliant, Ed. We do have to learn from them.
We've got to stay the course. What do we have, 4 people in line?
I made the answers less than 1 minute.
So we'll do some quicks so we can get everybody, but we'll ask no one else to join the line. Please, go ahead, sir.
Well, hello, brother. Dwayne Brown, senior manager with Accenture, and I'll be remiss without mentioning my fraternity, Alpha Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I want to ask you a question. I had a question originally, but with the sense of the room, it was around black wealth, but I want to switch to my family. I have an 8-year-old son, a 5-year-old daughter. What do I tell them about preparing for this country when I go back home today? I would love to hear your thoughts on what do we teach our children now and as they get older. So I would love to hear that from you.
You know, and I'll try to say this as quick as I can. Obviously, you be realistic with them and tell them all the technicalities. When you drive, keep your hands, turn the light on, the police pull you. But always be intentional every day about telling them how incredible they are, how bright their future is, because it's about what Charles Dickens said. If you have great expectations on a person, normally they will live up to them. If you have average expectations, they will live up to them. I mean, American society gives so many negativities to our children on a constant basis that the psychologists say if we had been able to talk to our child 2 hours a day, what we have to do is do positive reinforcements over and over and over and over again. Because, and with social media, it's even worse. All the negative stuff they see, all the craziness out there that they're being put into their subconscious mind about, black people are shiftless or worthless or criminal or not smart or inferior. Man, when we got black boys and girls, we just gotta keep telling them, your future's so bright. I mean, my eyes hurt when I think about your future. I mean, we gotta really make them believe it. And then when we say Black Lives Matter, our actions gotta speak. We can't not see stuff on the news and not talk to our children about it. We gotta tell them, no, I'm gonna write a letter, or we gonna go down to the church together. I'm doing it with my daughter and talk about how special black women are and what they contributed, because our children gotta believe when they go up and start competing in this world, I'm just as good as any of you other white, black, brown, red. They got to believe that they are capable, and not only capable, that they're going to do it. And that is us. Parents got to make our children believe that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Charles Stein. I represent AT&T's External and Legislative Affairs Division, and I have a question for you both. In the face of intentional oppression, what have you found to be the most effective strategy for demonstrating the value of black life to win equity?
You want to go first? He said it's both ways.
Ben didn't want that one. I think it is a lot of what Ben just suggested. I think the best way for us to prove anything is just to prove ourselves, and not in the way that we used to believe. Right? We used to believe, particularly if we got into corporate America, we had to dress a certain way. We had to deal with them the way they were comfortable, them, white folks, let's just be honest. There was this homogenization of black people. I think we're starting to understand, and George Floyd blew the doors open, that it really doesn't matter, and Donald Trump really blew the doors open. We're finding that it really doesn't matter who we are or what we do. We're seen in a certain light, to Ben's point. Yeah. And so I think that we have to do two things. I think that it is incumbent upon us to start to be honest about where we are as a community. We do have to start ending those microaggressions against each other. We have to start to speak up about why are we spending more time worried about not his mental health, but worried about the shenanigans of Kanye West versus the idea that Herschel Walker might actually win in Georgia. We have to find priorities and demand of our community that we're not taking this any longer. And that this is the way, I think about sometimes as I've gotten older, you laugh about, what your parents used to say and you end up doing it. Or now, I used to be the young guy in the room, now I'm the old guy in the room. But you do start to see that wisdom. And what I don't think we've given back to a younger generation is the wisdom that Earl Graves Sr. gave to someone like myself. Yeah. And he received it from his mentors. And so I think we've got to get back to some of those old ways that have kept us, because by all accounts, we should not be here. We shouldn't be in this room as executives. Hell, we really shouldn't be here the way we've been dealt with. But with resolve and fortitude, we've made it through. I think we've got to get back to some of those old school ways, because just because it's old doesn't mean it's no good.
And I'll just say this, how you deal with the oppressors or oppression. John Johnson said, there's no denying excellence. I try to go in court and I try to tell our lawyers, I have white lawyers who work with me too, but a lot of times I have minority lawyers, and I try to tell them, whatever you do, it's going to have an impact on not just you, but tragically, every other black lawyer, every other Hispanic lawyer that come in this courtroom. So if you're prepared, you're sharp, you on top of every precedent, then it can change that judge's whole viewpoint. Now, some of them just going to be evil and nasty, but there's no denying excellence. And I say this, Kevin McDonough and Grant Hill and Arnold Donald, we was at the table talking about Herschel Walker just briefly, and we just said, I don't know what people's political persuasion is, but when you hear him up there talk about the win in China and they got our good air and all this stuff, and it just sounds foolish. We have to be very careful because a lot of white people think, oh, he's like that, that's how all of them are. And they start lumping all of you intelligent brothers and sisters who did everything to have your position. They watch that Herschel Walker debate. Then they come to work the next day and they start looking at you kind of short. It matters.
And let's be clear, it's not political persuasion that is the difference in Herschel Walker and anything else.
Yeah.
Herschel Walker had been hit a couple too many times. That's what that is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
It reminds me, when you talk about excellence, it reminds me of a mentor of mine and someone I know you admire, Johnny Cochran. Those of you who remember Johnny's wardrobe, Johnny used to wear a purple suit to court. I said, Johnny, how you wearing a purple suit to court? Because I'm the baddest cat in the courtroom.
Yeah.
And so when you get that excellence, you can do what you need to. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Larry Alibioshu. I own a men's clothing store in Southfield, Michigan, and I deal with men, and I deal mostly with black men. I've been doing that for 32 years. Now, as much as I deal with men in all crosses of life, during prom season, I deal with young men that are graduating from high school. Most of the time, when the parents bring these men, these boys to my shop, they've never had a suit before, they've never bought dress clothes before. But I've never been interested in really dressing them. My interest is, what are they doing after they finish high school? Most of these kids are not going to college. Most of them, when I talk to them, they are not going to college, but their mothers want to buy them the finest clothes to go to prom all the time. I see this every year for 32 years. Now, I have a daughter that I've given everything to her. And I know that Head has a daughter that he has given everything to her. All of us in this room have daughters. But if we don't take the time to develop our men to make sure that they raise nice boys, who's going to marry our daughters?
Okay. Is that the question?
So the question, so my question to you, my question is what do we do in our community to encourage these single mothers to make sure that their boys are educated?
That their boys are what?
Educated.
Oh. Well, that's what we all grapple with a lot. And it's not just our boys. We want our daughters to be prepared too. And it comes down to what we said before, making sure our children are more intelligent. And so some of the parents, we talked about the talent of 10 and 90%. Some of them won't know, but it's incumbent upon us to get involved in our community, start trying to be mentors to our sons and daughters, but they're friends too. You know, when people are in school, I see already my 9-year-old daughter got her little crew, her clique. I try so much to know who they are and try to influence their thinking too. You know, Joe Kennedy, he was smart. He understood for his children, they children. And you should be able to influence a child. You should be able to trick them into thinking, like his big thing was, his children had to read books, and when they read books, he would just make it be the biggest thing in the world. When John or Robert Kennedy read a book, he talked about how he would take them and buy them suits, buy them whatever they wanted, as long as they read that book. And so it put into their mind that you have to do something to get a reward. And they can't do it, a lot of those mothers who are bringing the children, but it's a village mentality. I was raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs and was gone most of the time. Thank God I had an uncle who took everybody to our Little League football game, and it's so deep, I know he's in heaven looking down. I mean, all us children in the project, he packed us in the station wagon, be like 12 little black kids. None of us had daddies in the house. He was our Pop Warner for everybody. And I never forget this one time, and this may be something good to end on, because we talk about influence. I remember at the City of Lumberton, North Carolina Recreation Department, it was 1979, we in 4th, 5th grade. They say everybody got to have a telephone if they're gonna play football in the city park. For liability purpose, we got to be able to call and do it. None of us had phones back then in the government housing projects. And I remember I was always an observer. I try to listen more than I talk. My uncle, man, you talk about a man. That white man, the white lady and the black lady was like, well, look, they don't have phones. He said, well, they're my children. They was like, oh, you the father for all of them? And my uncle said, you can't prove I'm not.
Wow.
And his phone number allowed us to play football for the whole little community. And you don't know what that did for us little black boys looking at a real example of a black man. So the village have to help raise the children, raise the men up.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Last question, and I will note that what Larry said, we've got to really listen. He said, what do we do for those mothers who bring, it's really also the fathers who aren't there to bring those kids.
Well,
we have to start to demand
But they put them in prison a lot.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we can't blame, you know.
I don't blame anyone. I'm suggesting that we have to start to change the narrative.
Yeah.
I.e. different judges, i.e. some of those men were in the wrong place at the wrong
Serving
wrong
on
time.
jury duty.
Yes, absolutely.
We got to talk about that in our church every day. Serving on jury duty and standing up. A lot of times, and I'm sorry, I got to do that. You have white people on the jury, all these pro-Fox News people, and they come there, they say, man, this my day. I'm going to make America great again and so forth. And then the black people come in there and they doing anything in their power to get out of jury duty. And then the ones that stay, they'll be deadlocked. They'll be out there for 12 hours and so forth. And you know it's a war going on in that jury deliberation room. And it breaks my heart why the black people always feel we got a cave. Hang the jury. If y'all can't agree, I guarantee you this here, the white people on the jury, they ain't gonna fold just to go along to get a verdict. No, they say, well, we just can't have a unanimous verdict. The jury's hung. Y'all come back 6 months and do this over again. But black people cave, man. That's why Pam Turner killed a cop. And I knew though, that young black woman, that black man, the first time they came back in the courtroom, you could tell they were polarized. I mean, everybody's arm was folded and everything, but then they came back the next day and they said not guilty for the cop, and the black people kept their head down the whole time. They would not even look at the family's table.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Dr. Myrtle Alexander, and I'm the founder and chair of the Institute for Academic...
Get a little closer to the microphone.
My name is Dr. Myrtle Alexander. I'm the founder and CEO for the Institute for Academic Management. I wanted to ask you, or revert back to your initial conversation regarding the farmers and how it played into the Great Reset when you talk about black farmers, because I'm launching academies across the country, first one here in DC, for underprivileged and privileged youth, for our children. And I want to ask you, how am I to prepare myself for the pushback that I know I'm going to get? Because we're looking at educating our children for the global stage. Children in America rank at the bottom of the totem pole on the global scale. The only thing that we rank number one in for our children is confidence. Everything else, we're in the low 20s out of 30 on a global scale. How am I to prepare myself for the pushback? I'm already getting pushback. The Catholic Church have already canceled me, and I haven't done anything yet.
Okay. I think, and let's broaden it a bit. I got you. Okay. Let's broaden it a bit. The idea of when you're trying to make change, when you're trying to go against the grain, how do you prepare yourself for, as she said, the pushback that you're going to receive?
That I'm receiving.
That she's receiving.
Well, I think you're strategic. You know, most of the times we go in courtrooms knowing that nobody really values the black life that I'm arguing for, whether the person is in a wrongful death or even more appropriate for this crowd, we take on a lot of discrimination cases of black executives. And you go in there and you know that the judge and the jury, they don't ever want to really hear about, oh, we got these black people whining again. They want to hand out affirmative action babies, all this stuff. And so you strategically go in and you start finding out who your audience is. You do as much work as you can before. Remember, it's about excellence. It's what he said about Johnny Carter. You go in there and you want to know your case cold better than anybody in the room. You want to know it better than your adversary. You want to know it better than the judge. You even want to know it better than your clients. And they're the ones who live through it. But that's how prepared you have to be when you take on the war. And, you know, a lot of people, it's not for the faint of heart when you're going to say, I'm going to take a stand. Some people won't ever do it. They won't ever have the courage or the conviction to do it. But I know this is going to sound crazy. Most of my victories have been not so much about me being smarter than the other side, but having the courage to make the argument. And God takes over, and then the court of public opinion gets involved. You got to remember, most corporations are publicly traded. And I don't ever go into a case here thinking they're going to care about black people, but I think they're going to care about their own expediency. And so you make it about them and congressional hearings and state legislative hearings and the fact that we're going to mess up your quarterly stock price. And then the board of directors is going to start looking at you, CEO, and, oh, it ain't no more about black people. They're like, hey, man, why you ain't get rid of this issue? Now our stock price going down because I hate to say it, Netflix got it right. They followed me all that year. They picked that line out. I said, if America understands anything, it understands money. And anything that start affecting their money, oh, they will make adjustments. And that's how we raise the value of black life. You start affecting their capitalism.
Well, I am an economist, so I guess I get the message. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Crump. Let me say very quickly, Ben is running to catch a flight, so we're going to hand it over to Alfred because this doesn't stop. We've got a great presentation for you. Let us send Ben off again. Safe travels, brother.
Hey. Ed Gordon, the one and only Ed Gordon, the dean of black journalism.
Let's give Attorney Crump another round of applause. Let's give another round of applause for Ed and his great job as he always does as a journalist. Just a few housekeeping notes. Join us again here in the ballroom for a seat at the table, getting on corporate boards, a significant discussion on what you need to do to get on that enviable board. That begins at 1:15 p.m. this afternoon, and lunch will be served. Visit the Manulife John Hancock booth and register to win an Apple Watch Ultra. And of course, continue to visit the BMX Lounge and share your experiences on social media using the hashtag BMXCL, BMXL. We continue our series of Fireside Chats this morning